Welcome to the first ever Drive Idaho podcast. My name is Vincent Trimboli. I have the honor of being the manager for the Idaho Transportation Department's Office of Communication, and it's my pleasure to host these podcasts. The Drive Idaho podcast is a new communication channel for ITD. We are planning to release these podcasts on a monthly basis, and for at least the first year, we will use this forum to help better educate the public on all things I-84 in Canyon County. We will provide construction updates and news, but most importantly, we want to use this platform to share insights, our expertise, and broaden your horizons on the importance of Idaho's transportation infrastructure. For the next half-decade, ITD is set to expand part of Idaho's busiest interstate corridor with much-needed improvements on 84 from Nampa to Caldwell. In just a moment, we will get into much more detail with ITD Transportation Program Manager Amy Schroeder. Amy will talk about why ITD is embarking on this more than $300 million expansion effort and how it might affect you, the driving public. But first, let's do some marketing. The opportunity to give the public input to make suggestions or just ask questions is vitally important to ITD. On this 84 corridor project, the podcast is just one of many communication channels. You can find information all the time and from any device on our project website, itdprojects.org/84 corridor. That's itdprojects.org/84 corridor. If you have questions or comments, we can always be reached via email, 84corridor@itd.idaho.gov. To sign up to receive regular information updates, text 84 corridor to 22828. And finally, if you're like me and you prefer that old-fashioned thing called a conversation and just want to speak with somebody, feel free to give us a call at 208-334-8002. That's 208-334-8002. We monitor all of these communication channels on a daily basis and stand by ready to respond. This is the Drive Idaho podcast. Time now for our feature interview. To do that, we bring in Amy Schroeder. Amy worked on the last set of major projects in the 84 corridor from Boise to Nampa, known commonly as the Garvey projects, during the late 2000s and earlier this decade. She has been with ITD for 15 years and is a transportation program manager overseeing all the work on this set of 84 corridor projects. Amy, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Vince. Good morning.
Yeah, so let's talk about the project. First, what are we doing? For the average person out there who's listening to this right now, what is ITD doing between Nampa and Caldwell over the next about half decade?
Vince, what they'll see is a modernized interstate between Nampa and Caldwell. We're adding additional lanes, we're improving interchanges, and also some of the structures and the bridges that are needed to transport the railroad, the water under the interstate, and some of the utilities in the corridor.
Talk about the process to get from where we are now to where we began.
I don't know how much time we have today, Vince.
Again, high level.
High level. There's a phenomenal amount of work that goes into planning a project, especially on the interstate and of this magnitude. The public will see that the improvements will be ongoing for a number of years as we advance the corridor from Nampa all the way into Caldwell.
And the key piece, too, is that over those last several years, there's been a tremendous amount of input gathered from the public, right?
There has, yes.
And what is some of that process like? What do you guys and your team do? What does that entail, that public input gathering, to make these projects, to design these projects?
Well, early in a project, we will reach out to the public and ask them for their opinions about what needs to be improved and where some of the pinch points or the constraints are. We take that into account, coming up with alternatives that will satisfy the needs for up to 20 years in the future, a 20-year design horizon. And then from there, take our alternatives back out to the public and get their feedback on what we propose to do before we move forward.
Now, I've worked with engineers for a good portion of my adult life, and I'm a communicator, so I love working with engineers. What's it like to take that engineering you do, that hardcore engineering, which makes it safe and everything that goes into that, but combine it with the public input? What's that like, and how important is it to have those two pieces together?
We couldn't do this without having public input, right? That we get really great suggestions from our public outreach meetings and from our stakeholder meetings that influences the way that we develop the project.
Amy, this corridor itself has been a top priority for the department and for many people in this area of the state and the Treasure Valley area of the state for a long time. Talk about how much it costs to build this and why it was important to wait to get all that funding together instead of building it piecemeal.
ITD has dedicated over $300 million to modernizing the I-84 corridor in Canyon County. And these improvements have been needed for a number of years, but they were just not attainable in smaller pieces. We would be inconveniencing the public to a great extent, doing projects a little bit at a time. So having all of this funding available at once is allowing us to go in, expedite the improvements in the corridor, and get back out of there so the public can enjoy them for the years to come.
Well, this is our very first of the Drive Idaho podcast, and as we continue to do these down the line, we're always going to take the top 3 questions from our listeners, and we're going to have Amy help us answer some of these. Let's start with number 1. Is ITD building an additional interchange between Nampa and Caldwell?
That's a really good question, Vince. We actually get this one quite a bit. There's a 5-mile stretch between the Karcher interchange and the Franklin Road in Caldwell, and so people think, yeah, we need another interchange in there. I want to be able to get off a little closer to my house, get back on the interstate a little closer to my house, but every time we add a new access point or a new interchange to the interstate, it slows down the traffic and it causes more conflict points. So, think about when you're going through the rest of the interstate, when people are getting on and off of the interchanges at the ramps, there's conflict. Sometimes you have to slow down. Traffic gets a little bit congested. So ITD takes this very seriously in our planning. So the way that ITD plans for a possible new interchange is reviewing how the existing infrastructure is working. Do the interchanges that are already there handle the traffic in the design year? So we looked at Karcher and we looked at Franklin Road, and our traffic model shows that those 2 interchanges function just fine in the design year. So we are now focused on getting those lanes on I-84 and widening all the way to Caldwell. We use the Metropolitan Planning Organization's regional model, and that is maintained by the Community Planning Association of Southwest Idaho, or COMPASS. All agencies, all developers, anybody that's doing traffic forecasts in the area use the same model so that we're all on the same page. So we use this model, we forecast the traffic through our design year, which is 2045, and then we look at whether the existing infrastructure can be either improved or can accommodate the traffic in the future. And what we found in this study is that minor improvements at Karcher Interchange and at Franklin Road Interchange will satisfy the need well into the future. COMPASS does a great job of maintaining the data that's in the model. And really, this model is very comprehensive and gives us a great insight into what we can anticipate with future traffic.
Amy, our second question is, why are we replacing the bridges that go over Interstate 84 between Nampa and Caldwell?
Vince, if you're referring to the bridges that go over I-84 that don't have any ramps, we're talking about the Karcher Overpass, Old Karcher Road, Middleton, and Ustick roads. Those all need to be replaced because the piers that support the bridge are too close together that we can't get additional lanes on I-84 to accommodate the widening that needs to happen.
Okay, final question is, how will construction affect traffic on local roads?
Oh, also a good question. People naturally will take the path of least resistance. And during construction, they may see that the traffic on I-84 is something that they don't want to deal with, and they may choose an alternate route. ITD has made the promise that we'll keep 2 lanes of traffic open on I-84, except for some intermittent night and weekend closures. And so somebody may elect to use a local road or a side street or get off an interchange before they usually do, but we're not discouraging anyone from using I-84.
Thank you, Amy, for joining us today and giving us your insights. We'll probably speak to you many times on this podcast over the next few years as we talk more about the 84 corridor. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Vince. I look forward to it.
We will conclude each one of our podcasts with a safety message. And right now, let's talk about shifting the conversation about driver behavior. What are the actions we can all make to keep each other safe while driving through our cities, along Idaho's interstates and scenic highways? We have all heard the term distracted driving. At ITD, we want to turn that negative conversation and that negative word distraction into a positive. Rather than focusing on the negative, let's shift the conversation to the positive driver behaviors we should have. That's why we have launched the Shift Idaho campaign about a year ago. The goal is to create a movement that helps reduce distracted driving incidents by encouraging conversations about engaged driving. If you go to the website shiftidaho.org, that's shiftidaho.org, you'll see a number of videos. Each speaks from a different point of view. Whether it's a mother, a truck driver, or a young person, each persona shares stories about what it means to them to drive engaged in the moment, free from distractions. Again, the website is shiftidaho.org, and let's all make the shift to engaged driving. And as they say in the videos, drive well, Idaho. Well, that's going to do it for our first Drive Idaho podcast. To learn more about the Idaho Transportation Department, please visit us anytime from anywhere at itd.idaho.gov. Also, join the conversation on Facebook and Twitter. Thank you for listening to the first of what we hope will be many Drive Idaho podcasts. I'm your host, Vincent Trimboli. Please be safe, and remember this tip: 2 hands on the wheel, eyes on the road, and your mind on drive.